On this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, my origin story.
Welcome to the Crushing Debt Podcast with your host, Florida attorney Sean Yesner, where our goal is to help you get rid of the financial bullies in your life.
So welcome back to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Sean Yesner, the owner and founder of Yesner Law. And so this week's episode is going to be a little bit different. Those of you that have been tuning in for a long time will note that the last, couple of months worth of episodes have been interview episodes. This episode is just me and you. Back to some of the earlier days of the podcast where I talked about a topic. The other interesting thing about this topic is it is going to be my origin story. So it's going to be how Yesner Law started. And many of you have heard this before, especially if you're longtime listeners to the show. And I've given little bits and details of this story over the course of the podcast. I've also talked about this story on other podcasts where I've been a guest, but I've never put this story together in this format before. And so I hope you enjoy this episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, which is basically the origin of Yesner Law. Now, before I get started, I do want to mention our sponsor, Sam Cohen of Attorneys First Insurance. Attorneys First provides errors and omissions insurance, or what's called E&O insurance, or malpractice insurance, to Florida lawyers and title companies. Now, if you're a lawyer or a title company and you're outside the state of Florida, Sam can also help you as well. Go to attorneysfirst.com and you can contact Sam there to get a quote, or you can email him directly, sam@attorneysfirst.com, and you can get a quote. If you're inside the state of Florida, he will give you apples to apples your current policy and what he can provide. If you're outside the state of Florida, he can either quote you a policy, or he can get licensed in that state and quote you a policy, or he can refer you to someone who can quote you a policy. So this week's episode, like I said, is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be my origin story. Now, one of the other things that I'm doing is I'm going to Facebook Live my recording of this week's episode, but I wanted to create this introduction first, and then I'll start the Facebook Live. So if you're listening to this episode on the day it's released, or if you're listening to this episode after it's released, go to the Yesner Law Facebook page or go to our YouTube page, and you'll see this video on YouTube or on Facebook or on Facebook Live. But I hope you enjoy. This is the origin story of Yesner Law. So at the beginning of this story, at the beginning of my origin story, I was a partner at a law firm that I had built from scratch. No, not Yesner Law, although at the beginning of the law firm it was called Yesner Law. But by the time my origin story starts, I'll skip some of the boring stuff at the beginning, and by the time we really start this story, there were 3 official partners, probably 4 partners at this law firm that I had created from scratch. The law firm was pretty substantial. We were making probably near $5 million annually in revenue. We had 50 employees, and so the law firm was going pretty well. My salary was over 6 figures. I had just gotten married. I just had my first son. My wife just had our first son, and so everything was going well. Now, I wanted to prove to my law partners that I could run the firm efficiently and bring in some high-value clients. I wanted to make a bunch of money. I wanted to support my family like my father did for us when I was growing up. And as the first partner in the firm, as the first named partner, as the founder of the law firm, I took on the role of managing the law firm. And so although I thought I was doing a really good job at managing the law firm, I wanted to be able to bring in more clients, more high-value clients, more high-dollar clients. And so at the time, what I was struggling with was understanding how to price our services and how to generate business. There was this tension amongst the partners, and I was scared that my partners were going to leave and start competing law firms. I felt like I was unable to justify to my law partners my value as an owner of the law firm. You know, this made me feel like I was not pulling my own weight, which meant that my partners would leave and I would be unable to bring in the clients and the revenue to support the staff, the 50 people the 50 other mouths, the 50 other families that I had to feed. Plus, I needed to bring home enough money to support my wife and my new baby boy, my new baby son. One day, I remember being at my wife's grandmother's house, and I noticed on my phone a strange message that my access to my bank accounts, this is on my BlackBerry. This was in the days I'm carrying around my BlackBerry. And I noticed that there was a message there that my access to the bank had been cut off. And I thought, that's strange. And I tried to log into the bank accounts for the law firm, and I couldn't do it. And then within another minute or two, I got a notification that I wasn't getting any more emails. For some reason, all of my emails got shut off. All my access to the email servers got shut off. And I thought, wow, I don't know what's going on. And I started checking other things on my phone. And the more I checked on my phone, the more I lost access to the law firm. The law firm that I had built, the law firm that I had founded, the law firm that I had started from scratch. Now I don't have any access to that thing anymore. What I learned was that the partners had gotten together and basically fired me as an attorney at the law firm. They had gotten together. They had enough votes. I trusted them enough that I was not a majority owner of the law firm, but I trusted them. So I never thought anything like this could ever happen again. And now here I am over a holiday weekend at my in-laws' house, and I've just lost the law firm that I started from scratch. It made me feel like giving up. It made me feel like going to another law firm and applying to be an associate attorney. I mean, I'd already started one law firm from scratch. Did I have the wherewithal? Did I have the knowledge? Did I have the desire to start a brand new law firm? It would have been much, much easier to go apply somewhere and become an associate attorney working for another lawyer. But then, as if by chance, something amazing happened. I discovered that I could support myself on my own. I discovered that I had a great network of people that wanted to give me business, that I knew a ton about networking, about marketing, about accounting, about budgeting. I remember being here in this very room, the very room that's a little bit more dirty in the background than I would like to admit, that I would like to acknowledge. But I remember being in this room a couple of days later, after I had emptied my office at my old office, after I had emptied my desk at my old office with the help of some really great friends that helped me pack up and bring my stuff here. I remember being in this office, and I remember getting my first appointment. Because this all happened back in 2012. Well, I had started the law firm in 2004 with absolutely nothing. But by the time I got to 2012, I had a network. I had a referral partner network. I had friends that would support me. I had other business owners that would support me. And so I didn't necessarily have to start from scratch all over again in 2004. And I remember being in this office, and I remember getting that first client appointment. And I remember talking to that client. And I remember that client on the spot hired me. And I remember that client on the spot sent me money. And that's when I realized I could support myself on my own. I didn't need the network of this 50-person beast that we had created. And so at that point, everything changed. I was able to run my law firm, Yesner Law now, the second version, Yesner Law 2.0. I was able to run my law firm the way that I wanted to run it, without interference from law partners. I was able to budget for the law firm to maximize the amount of money I made, and I was able to bring home more money to my wife and son. Even though my salary had dropped, I was able to bring home more money. I was not bound to take on every client that called. I could pick and choose who I wanted to work with. So I decided to rebuild my law firm, Yesner Law, now Yesner Law 2.0. I decided to rebuild my law firm so I could continue to be my own boss and own my own business. I would not have to go back to being someone else's employee. I wouldn't have to go back to being someone else's associate attorney. I would not have to go back to billing 2,600 hours a year. That's 10 billable hours a day. Now, those of you that aren't in a industry that does billable hours, that's not 10 hours of working a day. That's 10 hours of billing clients per day. That 10 hours doesn't include however long you take for lunch. That 10 hours doesn't include bathroom breaks. That 10 hours doesn't include talking about the weekend's football game or baseball game or whatever around the water cooler. That is 10 hours a day of billing clients, 2,600 billable hours per year. I wouldn't have to worry about that. I could make the law firm a boatload of money without having to worry about billable hours. I could make the law firm a boatload of money without being someone else's employee. But there was still a problem. I had to deal with cash flow. I had to stop the law firm from surviving month to month so I could stop surviving paycheck to paycheck. I needed to make enough money that my wife would not have to work, but could choose to work if she wanted to. I think that was sort of the birth of the saying in my first book, Crushing Debt. And like I say at the end of every episode, I hope at the end of the month you have more money, and not at the end of the money you have more month. I didn't have to live paycheck to paycheck. I didn't have to cause the law firm to survive month to month. So in the end, I focused on budgeting and cash flow. That allowed me to market more efficiently. That allowed me to pick and choose what elements of marketing I wanted to pursue, like, for example, this podcast. It allowed me to look to the future and what I wanted to accomplish versus working just to fund the next month or working just to fund the next paycheck. That meant that I could operate efficiently and profitably without having to worry about billable hour requirements. In the end, I was able to rebuild a solo law firm quickly and begin to grow it again, different from the mistakes that I had made in the past at that other law firm. So when all is said and done, I was able to create a growing law firm that runs profitably on a tight budget and allows me and my family to be debt-free. I mean, isn't that the goal? To live debt-free, to not have to worry about, do I have enough money to make it to the end of the month? Can I plan to go on vacations? Can I plan to do things that I want for my family, do things to my house, do things for my family? In the end, all this means that I can support my wife and now my 2 sons. We can take vacations. We can spend time together as a family. We can live debt-free. We can do what we want to do. We can do what we need to do as a family. And so that's the origin of Yesner Law. That's the origin story of Yesner Law. Like I said, I haven't told pieces of it before. Some of the pieces, like the fact that I was fired from the previous law firm that I had founded. I've told those in other podcasts, in other people's podcasts, but I don't think I've ever told it here on the Crushing Debt podcast. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed hearing how Yesner Law got started. Admittedly, this is going to be a shorter podcast episode than I normally do, but I hope to bring additional topics to you as the months go on, additional Facebook Lives, additional content that I can help you answer. One of the big excitements I have here on the horizon is I do have an ebook that's set to launch here in the next couple of weeks called Become Debt Free in Less Than an Hour, in less than 1 hour. And I'll be going more into that ebook as we go here in the coming weeks. So that's all for Facebook Live. Thank you, and I will catch you in next week's episode of the Crushing Debt podcast.
If you have questions that you think would make a great topic for a future episode, please email Sean or connect with us on social media. Sean Yesner and Yesner Law, PL, are Florida licensed attorneys. The information contained in this week's episode is not a substitute for legal advice. Your situation may differ, especially if you are located somewhere other than the state of Florida. If you have questions, please contact our office or contact a local attorney. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast.